Hey everybody, welcome back to Visible Kindness. I am so excited today to have a very special guest. All my guests are special. I don't know how God does this, but he brings really interesting people into my show. And Jo Grineage is going to be with us today, and I've been wanting to have her on the show for quite a while. And for some reason, when we try to book it, it doesn't work. My schedule doesn't work, but so there's a reason why that's happening. And she has a very powerful story. I haven't heard everything yet, but we're going to find out today. And let me just give you some background for Jo. She has 25 years in the fitness industry, which I need to hear that a lot more in my life, but she's very talented. She's in really great shape. She's an influencer. She's a personal trainer. She's a motivator, and I've had that experience with her, just having a visit with her before the show started. And she's an entrepreneur, and she has recognized the value of raising her family and what it has taught her. And her family is 7 children. She has 7 children. How she's doing this, we're going to find out. But she said she's been set up and apart and knows that the purpose of her life is to lead. I love talking to people like that. And she has spent over 25 years in the fitness industry. And so the biggest thing, I shouldn't say the biggest thing, but a topic I really am looking forward to having with her is about a book that she wrote called The Silent Cycle. Breaking free from generational strongholds in order that we not repeat the trauma of narcissistic and toxic relationships. And with that, I would like to welcome you, Jo, to Visible Kindness. Thank you so much for making it through the challenges we had with booking everything. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to come on and share my story. I'm thankful that, it ended up working out okay with all of the glitches and things that happened. But I definitely do believe that when there's something that needs to be shared, the enemy will fight against it. And so we won the battle, and we're here today so that I can share my story and spend some time with you. So I'm excited to chat.
So am I. And what I like about just reading, because we met on Facebook, and I love that when this happens, and I find something very interesting about people. So I'm always watching and making friends, and I was like, wow, there's something very interesting about you. I was like, I've been following you and commenting and whatnot, and I just haven't been able to figure it out. And I watched you on a podcast you did recently, and I'm like, wow, she's so interesting. There's so much more to you than I thought. I thought in the beginning you were, a fitness instructor, and that's what you did. I had no idea you have this background and these skills and a family. And now I'm like, what is going on in your life? How did you get there? And you're such a wonderful Christian. So I'm curious, how long have you been a Christian? Like, how did that happen for you?
Well, I share actually as part of my book that I feel like as a little girl, I was called to just be set apart. And I think that God chooses specific people, not necessarily for any grand reason, but just that you can hear the voice of God, and maybe not even audibly, but ever since I was a little girl, I was the youngest of 5 children. I spent a lot of time in my room by myself, kind of just playing, singing, because we went to church often. I would play and sing to my dolls and sing to myself hymns from the hymn book. And I found myself at a very young age speaking to God, that I recognized that even back then, God and I communicated in a way that was very personal, that I didn't even know was happening as a young girl, like between the ages of probably 6 to 10.
Wow.
My book shares a lot about a very personal topic of incest, of abuse as a young girl. So when I would hide away and kind of separate myself from that negative situation, that's when I felt God the closest to me. And so I really feel like that's where he just chose to use me in a way that I didn't even know was possible. And I don't always know how to explain that, because people always ask, like, how do you hear from God? Do you hear a voice speaking to you, or like, what does that feel like? And it's different for everyone. I think that that's what makes it a personal relationship with God. He uses his power and his might. He uses the Bible, he uses songs, he uses videos, podcasts, different ways to speak directly to your heart. And I feel like it's such a blessing that started as such a young age, because then I was able to develop that as I grew more and more in relationship with him. And I think that that had been a foundation, even in the midst of what happened to me as a young girl. We went to church every week. I went to youth group through the week. I sang in the choirs. And then as I started my family, I kept them grounded in the church. So it's always been a very strong part of my life. And I don't know where I would be had I not had that strong foundation of my faith in my life. Seeing something or hearing something, but not looking at it like, could this be God? He's in so many things in every day that I walk around. But when you're aware of it, then you're looking for him. Like I go looking for him. God, show me this. So then you're more in tune to where he wants you to be and act and speak and where you want you to walk. That's hearing from God. But it's not until you actually recognize that in every breath we take, that's the voice of God. We think we're doing this on our own, but there is no coincidence in life, and there is no. For a reason. This is happening for a reason, and I'm a very strong believer in that. But that's what faith is, right? That's the faith of believing that when that prayer was spoken over you, that God was actually going to answer it. And being like a baby Christian, you don't know what that even looks like. And then when he shows himself to be true, it's like, wow, this is actually what we prayed for. You and your old habits still look for what the sin was, but God in his infinite power breaks that. And then we just have to recognize it for what it is, that it's us, that it's everything about what he's done. And that's what living out this story and sharing, because incest is a topic. We talk about abuse a lot, just like we talk about sexual sin, but we don't necessarily hone in on pornography. We talk about abuse, but we don't necessarily hone in on incest. It's a little bit darker. So people tend to kind of not even sugarcoat it, but just they'll say I've been abused, but they don't go deep to who was that actually abused. I think that was where I took a step of, bravery, but more so breaking that generational curse that God speaks about, that we have to have, we have to tap into the power that he will give us to do that and not continue it generations to come. And it may not be something that I even see. And I think that that's where a lot of times Christians hold back from taking these big, courageous steps, because they may not see it happen, but it's what your legacy that you've left behind. It may be in my children, but it may not even be in that generation. It may be in my grandchildren or their children, but at least God sees and honors the fact that I was brave enough to say, this has to stop. And I want to be the one to break this generational curse so that my children's children's children do not have to live in that darkness that the enemy has woven in our family from their back. And we have the power if we tap into what God gives us to do. I think that that's where I have learned over the past year and a half in my own personal healing that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is inside of me. Tap into that power. I can write a story like this, as difficult as it might seem in my carnal mind. It doesn't matter what people say if they want to judge, and especially because it's my family. I had to make that decision. What is more important? It's not that I don't still love every single member of my family. It's not that at all. In fact, I want healing for everyone in my family, especially. But when you ask, or if anyone says to me, like, what's been the hardest part? I think that has been the hardest part. The people that I wanted the support from, you want them to be the people that are closest to you. And that's usually the people that push the hardest and move the farthest away. Because although God spoke this to me to share, they aren't ready maybe for this to be shared. So I had to remind myself that this isn't about trying to restore relationships with them. This is about honoring what God spoke over my life to do. And as difficult as it has been, I know that I am doing what he has purposed for me to do in my life, which is to serve and trust that he will take care of me. I know that we share a lot of that method of, and it may seem like madness to other people, but the paycheck and the big house and the fancy cars and all the trips, those things don't matter to me.
I'm not even driven by that anymore. I used to be, but I'm not even driven by it. I'm not interested at all, which is incredible.
Yeah. And the satisfaction that I thought that I would need to have at this age and stage in my life of, there's a certain status that you feel like you have to live up to at this point in your life. And it really does not even feel appealing to me. Like, there's no satisfaction in material things, because that is not why he put me on this earth. And so I'm so thankful that I was able to realize that. Even it took a while, like, I'm not gonna lie. I felt like, owning a gym was my goal. But what is that? What was that about? Is it so that I could help more people, or was it the financial stability that I thought I would have? And then it's like every time I would attain the next goal, I still wasn't feeling the satisfaction that I knew I could feel if I was actually just in complete service for God and doing what he put me on this earth to do. And now it's like, that's what trust is about, right? Like, it's knowing that
Yes.
even if I'm getting a paycheck every day, and even if I'm not, on this tier of, you're in this, pay range or pay scale, or you have this much saved for retirement, and, those things to everyone else. And it's so foreign. I think that this is why God kind of calls us aliens in this world. We're not of this world.
That's right.
So it's so foreign when other people hear you talk like that, for them to receive that, because they're like, well, you have to have money to live in this world, and you have to. But I function and live on just trusting God, and he
That's right.
never fails. He
That's
always
right.
takes care of me. He's not let me down. So
And if money doesn't show up, and all of a sudden you go poor, you got to hang in there, because he has a plan with that. He doesn't, like, it could be because there's many reasons why we go through what we go through, but it's never out of his plan. There's a reason for it. So we trust in him no matter what. It's not like, yes, you trust him and definitely money is going to be there. You don't know that. He wants to know, hey, if you don't have any money, where are you going to be? How much do you trust me still? And and like you said about time, our lives are but as a vapor. And I think about this a lot, because, like, literally, we're doing a podcast right now, and I can see us in heaven looking down. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know, but we're not going to forget things, right? But all of a sudden, we're going to be in heaven, and it'll be like, wow, it feels like we just did that podcast like a vapor ago, right? That's how quickly our lives are gonna go over, and that's why I'm just not interested in building up some kind of a lifestyle, and then all of a sudden I'm standing before God. Straight is the path, narrow is the gate that leads to what is it? My brain. That leads to life, and few there be that find it. And then when you stand there, he wants to know, what have you done for me? And so many people are going to say, I did this, I did that, I did this, and I have a nonprofit, and I help people, I did this, all good things. And God's going to say, go to hell. I never knew you. And that word "know" in Greek is the same word that was used when Adam knew Eve and they bore a son. So it's a very, very intimate relationship. But God says, I never knew you. I didn't have that close, intimate relationship with you. So what you did doesn't. And he'll show you how he was after you the whole time. And you chose not to go after him. We could talk forever on this stuff. It's awesome. I want to ask you, I want to go through a little bit of your life here, and then talk about your book. So, you have 7 children, and you have spent over 25 years working in the fitness industry, and now, if I understand, you're single, and you're homeschooling 7 children, and you have a fitness industry. So can you tell us about how you got into the fitness industry? What does that mean? Like, what are you doing there? And if you are really homeschooling your children, how are you managing your life like this? Sounds very interesting.
It is very interesting, because I'm actually out of the homeschooling season, but I have 7 children that are now grown. They're between the ages of 19 and 29.
Oh, you're good to go.
This has been my first year of being an empty nester. I was married for 23 years. So yes, they share the same father. Everyone always asks that. Is it the same dad? And we were always an anomaly, going out and about, because not a lot of people have such big families in this generation, day and age kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
yes.
When we would go out and about, it was like, they're all yours, and wow, that's amazing. And so I have 6 girls and 1 boy. He's right in the middle. So right now they're 19, 21, 23, 25, 26, 28, and 29. So yeah, it's been the biggest blessing
I
being a
want to ask
mom.
you how old you are, and should I hit pause before
Oh, I
asking?
know I'm 53. I don't mind sharing
Okay.
my age. I feel like it's a blessing to be able to say that 53, but I took, chasing after the seven kids and having them at home with me all the time, I think kept me in the good shape. Uh,
Wow.
I started working in the daycare industry as an early childhood educator. And then as my family grew, I wanted to be home with them more. So I decided to homeschool them. And then I worked as a before and after school teacher. And then slowly started getting more and more interested in the fitness industry as opposed to the teaching industry, which was flexible enough that I could be home with the kids all day and then train and work out with people in the evenings when their dad got home. And then after 23 years of being in a relationship where there was infidelity involved, I made the decision and God gave me the courage. It was like a veil lifted, and it was like God
Mm.
showed my daughter, my oldest, started to date. And it was like, you're being a very hypocritical mother, being with someone who's doing that, because you wouldn't want that done to your old daughter. And so he gave me the courage to step out of that relationship and to still take care of me so that I could take care of them. And
Mm.
at that point, I only had my youngest four with me. The older three were gone off to school. And I started to get more involved in the fitness industry. And then I ended up purchasing a gym. It's weird because I started off teaching in the church, my church hall, and I would just
You mean
invite the women.
fitness in the church?
Yeah, yeah.
Like in the
So
basement or
we would
something?
meet on a couple of nights a week, and I would teach
Wow.
them classes, and you know
Wow.
the things my verse that I have many tattoos, but one of the verses that I tattooed on my spine is, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." So
Oh,
that
I
was
love
our
that.
motivational speaking during the teaching classes, and then that just all kind of kept evolving and growing and growing. And then I purchased the gym in my small town, and then the business kind of expanded from there. So now the kids are all grown and gone, all of them thriving and doing well. I'm so thankful. I went through a very dark season when I was dating and choosing very unhealthy relationships in the partners that I was with. Partly because I went through an unhealthy marriage for so long, and partly because of the abuse. But I don't ever deny the fact that these were choices that I made. And the repercussions are that it takes healing to happen between myself and my kids because of those dark years where
Yes.
I was just trying to navigate being single and then wanting them to have a father figure and choosing unhealthy men and thinking that that was how I was going to heal everything, and not turning to God for those things, but looking into the world for those things to be answered. And so I just 2 years ago went through a very horrific abusive relationship where I lost everything. And in that time, and that's a case now that's in court, so I can't speak a lot about it. And it'll be my next book, sharing narcissistic relationships and abusive relationships outside of the family. But what that did was allowed for God to just pull me away from everything. Sometimes it takes losing everything. It's like Joseph in the pit, right?
Oh,
Like when you're
yes.
in places where you
Yes.
recognize that God is all you need, all you have. And
Yes.
when you think there's going to be other people there to come in and save you, they will not, but God will. And I stripped everything away. Things got taken away that I had worked very hard for the last 10 years to have. And it was when I had no money in the bank, I had no possessions. All I had was a car with no gas or insurance or anything. I was staying with family, and I just down on the floor felt like I wanted to die. I wanted to kill myself. I wanted to be gone. But thankfully, God reminded me of the children that I had, and the legacy I wanted to leave wasn't that I gave up, but that He could pull me up out of that pit and bring me back to where I needed to be so that I could share my story and then help other women, especially that had been in abusive relationships, or children that had been in really or abusive situations like I was, to show them that we serve a big God, and He can take the most destitute and down and out situation and turn it around and shine and shed light on it so that you can help other people. And in those darkness, and then in that darkness was when I recognized I didn't need money. I didn't need things. What I needed was to rely fully and completely on Him. And that's when the birthing of the book began. I journaled and journaled and journaled. I had journaled all my life, and people had always said, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. But it was in that time that I recognized that until I started to shed light on the things that felt really dark, there wasn't going to be time for me to heal. It was just going to be me wallowing in the past. And I needed to start making better decisions for myself and for my children to grow and move forward. And that's where the transition from owning a gym, I lost the gym during COVID, and started to rebuild my business. So I rebranded, rebuilt my business. So I have an online presence now. I have clients that I train mostly online. And then we are in the developing stage of producing an app where you can just kind of access different personal trainers' wellness needs. And it's interesting because in that there is a ministry. We don't have to stand on a stage or in a pulpit in order for us to be used by God. And I remind myself every day that if I just reach one person a day, that 1 out of 100 that God will come and get. If I can touch one person, then I feel like he's using me in a way that, because God spoke over my life about 3 years back, he said, you will speak to millions. And in my mind, I saw that as like conferences with thousands of people and, signing hundreds of books and all these people pouring
That might be
in.
part of it.
Yeah, but then he showed me every time you get on any social media platform,
Yes.
look how many people you have access to. And if every day, even just one person, and then that adds up, that's 365 people a year. But I know I'm reaching more than just one person a day. So you do the math, right? Like it is like on each platform, if it's 10 people and then 365 days a year, then it just keeps adding up and adding up. So I'm like, I'm fulfilling the promise that he made to me, even though it looks different than what other people may think. It doesn't have to be that the light from the world is shining on me. I want it to be that the light from inside is shining to the world. And so, timely enough, a friend of mine that I just kind of met on the street, I do this a lot. I just smile. Somebody comes up to me. They're like, why are you smiling? I'm like, it's a good day. And I sat and chatted with this woman in a cafe, and Cindy is her name. She messaged me last night and she just said in a few simple sentences, thank you for your posts. I am seeing them and it's changing me. And it was like, thank you, God, for confirming that even though I feel like it's just Facebook or it's just Instagram, if I am helping one person to see you, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was a video where over top of me working out, it was speaking about how God is the source of my life, right? Like he is providing. I'm not going to give up because he's not going to let me give up. He's going to be here with me. And if I'm inspiring even just one person a day, it keeps me on top of making sure that I do those posts and that I tell my story and that I'm authentic to him and that I'm deliberate about posting, right? Like sometimes before I used to just post to post.
Whatever. Yes.
But
yes.
it's like I want to be intentional. I want to make sure that I add a Bible verse or I say Jesus's name or somehow or another I acknowledge that none of this would be here. None of who I am would be what I am if it weren't for the fact that he reached down on those days when I thought I was going to die and pulled me up and said, we're not going to do that. You're not going to let the enemy win. You went through that for a reason. And we follow people in the Bible. Every single story in the Bible that inspires us, it's somebody that went from the pit to the palace, or
absolutely
that went from death to life, or
yes.
poverty to riches. It's always like they fought on the field and then they ended up being king. Like those,
and the riches weren't what they were pursuing ever.
Right. But God honored their life.
That's right.
By showing people, I think that I always look at that. I always look at the fact that he never just used an ordinary person. He always used somebody that was struggling, that was like,
yes,
down and out. And I'm like, that's me. I'm that person. Like, I feel like, why do I have to struggle, God? But he says to me, when I feel that way, your book wouldn't be here. Your gym, you wouldn't have had the gym. You wouldn't have had 7 children. Had you not gone through each one of those troubling and terrifying and, difficult things, you would not have the blessings that you have in your life today. And for that, I can't thank him enough. So basically, I'm thanking him for the trials, but I always say my pain has been my platform. My tests are my testimony. And when you look at it that way, then you recognize that God has chosen me to do this, to go
Yes.
through those times so that I can say to people, this has nothing to do with me. It has
Yes.
everything to do with this God that
Yes.
I want to share with you, right? I want to share this so that you don't have to go through tough times,
Yes.
feel like you're not going to make it.
Huh.
I've been through tough times. Like I tell you what, I've been through a lot of stuff.
Mm,
I
mm.
know you have too. So you can relate by saying, I know what it feels like. And I think the book has been like, it's a very vulnerable kind of collection of some journal entries.
You're holding that up. I want to ask you something before you hold that up. Let me ask you a question because I want to, you and I could go, we could talk for hours having coffee. I can tell. I can tell. So I want to talk about your book now. So I'm just going to read what you have on your site about that book. And then you let her rip and talk to us about anything you want about what started you, where it's at, what's happening. So here's what Joe said. In the shadows of family traditions and unspoken pain lies a legacy that refuses to stay hidden. The science cycle dives deep into the heart of generational trauma, exposing the wounds that echo through time and courage it takes to break free. Through raw honesty and poignant reflection, Joe Grineage explores the impact of unspoken truths, the grip of shame, and the liberating power of healing. This transformational journey invites readers to confront their own cycles, inspiring hope, resilience, and the possibility of a new beginning. A compelling and thought-provoking read, The Science Cycle is a must-read for anyone seeking freedom of the chains of the past. I am ordering that book as soon as we finish this podcast because it sounds so good. So with that, bring us into that book and how you started it and what's going on.
Well, it's not a long read. I have journal upon journal upon journal that I had collected over the years. And in the relationship that I had to leave last year, I had to leave a lot of things behind. The police came. It was not a good situation. I had to walk away from basically everything, including my journals. So in my time of not having much, I started to journal again, and God put it on my heart to kind of revisit that time in my life when I was a little girl and dealt with abuse. And it's tough to talk about because it was within my own home, from my siblings and uncle and people that were very close to me. So part of breaking the silent cycle that exists within a lot of our families is to be courageous enough to recognize that God will help you to go through it, even though the lie still exists. And a lot of times in Christian homes and in churches, people think that if it's not spoken about, it doesn't exist. So the unspoken truth is a lie, right? A lie from the pits of hell. The enemy wants us to think that if we just don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist. And I am determined to shine a light on things where people should not feel the shame that was put on me as a young girl and growing up.
That's right.
And one of the things was just to be quiet, right?
Yes.
That's what my mom would say, like, shut up. Don't talk to me like that. Don't speak about that. And I learned that love meant you let people hurt you and then you don't talk about it if they do.
Because they're family. We have close relationships, so it's okay.
Right. And so for my entire life, it's like you go to Christmas, Thanksgiving, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and you just hug the people around you and you pretend like it doesn't hurt when it was never really discussed. And then when it is discussed, it's like, oh, that's what kids do, but I always knew that God didn't want it to be that way for me, that He wanted me to be able to use my voice. And if I didn't get heard in that setting, then I would be able to help somebody else so that they could feel like they could step out of that cycle that they were caught up in. and talk to somebody else and break that cycle that's existing in a lot of our families. And I'm not alone in this. Like, as soon as you connect with another person that's been through something like this, they can't believe that I was courageous enough to speak of it, because in a lot of cultures, in a lot of societies, you will lose everything if you talk about these kind of dark secrets that people hide in their closets. And fortunately, God has graced me with not having that kind of fear over me. It's just relational that I'm, losing, but not to lose my possessions and things like that, because I'm divulging some secrets that have existed in our family. But I don't, I'm not angry at my family. I'm not angry. I have forgiveness for my parents and my mother, because I feel like she's been through the same things and just did not have the courage to step out and speak about it. And it
Yes.
doesn't happen as a generation if it didn't happen before, right? It didn't just happen randomly. And that's where the enemy just gets a foothold, a stronghold in these families, where if it's not abuse, then it's something else. And so it's not just about, if I didn't suffer from incest, this doesn't matter to me. It's about, we need to recognize that it is our responsibility, when there are generational curses, generational strongholds that exist in our family, that is not God's desire. His desire is that we have a relationship with our family that's healthy and that's strong and that grows who we are as people, and that our children and then their children then can feel like they can come to us and talk to us about things so that we can share with them.
What's interesting about what you just said is that's not God's plan. And of course it's not. But what people don't think about, or don't like to think about, is, and they don't even like the words I'm about to use, but that is Satan's plan. Because if he can destroy young children and if he can destroy the generational growth of a family, he wins all the way through that family growth, branch after branch after branch. And that was in my family, that was in your family. And so to break free of that is I love it, because now the enemy's got like zero. He's got zero on me, zero on you. He can try whatever he wants. And the only way he'll try anything is God will allow him. He doesn't get to do whatever he wants. God will allow him. And that's a whole thing that a lot of people don't understand, can't get into it. But God, the enemy, Satan doesn't have free will to do whatever he wants, but God allows him in his eternal plan for what he has. And so it's a great thing to get free from what the enemy's plans have been, to not just destroy you, but to destroy the entire generation of a family. And when we come out and we start doing this, he's like, he doesn't even like this podcast, right? He doesn't even like it. And the impact it's having, if it impacts one person, just like you said, then from that's what I'm looking for. That's what you're looking for. It's an amazing thing to get free
Powerful.
from it. No, this is a serious eternal battle we're getting into, not just getting free and getting healthy and getting our recovery, but it is literally a battle that we're in that is not, that you can't see in the physical realm. So anyway, that's that.
And one of the other things I wanted to add to is that I used to be like, I held back for many, many years. I've held back sharing my family, right? But I think it's so interesting that Jesus could not even go back to his hometown to teach.
Right. Yes.
People. He was only able to help a few people, and then he had to go. And that's why God took me away from my small town. And he keeps reminding me of that as I struggle. Sometimes it's like, I just want to go back and tell everybody, forget it. Like, what, and that's the enemy, right? Saying, oh, just go back on your hands and knees and apologize for writing the book or what. And it's like, no, Jesus couldn't even do that. He couldn't even work around the people closest to him.
Right.
In his own town. He had to go. And that's what I'm on this mission now, to recognize that, to be like him, I want to do what he had to do. I want to go through the things that he felt and the steps he had to take. And he had to go through some tough times. Like a lot of times we talk about the trials that Jesus had to endure.
Yes.
Good news, right? And it's hard to do the same thing. If we want to be like him, we have to go through the tough things. And this isn't easy. It's not easy to be vulnerable and to put a story like that on paper and to know that this is now something that everyone's going to know about. But what I do know is that God wouldn't have orchestrated for this to happen. He wouldn't have orchestrated this conversation between you and I if he did not want it to be out there.
Oh, absolutely.
he's got a plan for me in this book and in these podcasts and these opportunities that I've been given for his light to be shining in the earth. And if it's just from a little book that I put out there, then I'm thankful to have been given that opportunity. But I recognize that he had to do the same things, right? It wasn't easy for him. It's not going to be easy for us.
No.
And it's empowering, right? To think,
Yes, it is.
what I know he has destined for me to do. And I will not stop speaking the truth about what happened in order for the enemy to walk away and be like, okay, we've shut her up. I'm going to move on to the next person. And she's fine. She's not going to say anything more. It's a blessing. I'm thankful. I give God all the glory for this book. It's nothing to do with anything about me making money. It's about showing people that when you struggle and you lean on God, he will give you the strength to get through difficult times. He just will.
So let me ask you a question. I got a couple of questions because we're getting near the end of the show, which it feels like we just started. But
Yeah.
I want to ask you, so what would you say to someone who is, number one, not a Christian and can't figure out why a loving God would let something like this happen, or even a Christian that they believe the same thing? Like, what happened? Like, what is up with God? Why would he allow this to happen to me? How would you answer that to both people?
Well, to a non-Christian, it looks very different because there is no element of faith. It's a hard thing to explain when you don't have that trust or that faith. You have to be able to see in a person that there's something different. And then I think it's like you want that person to desire whatever it is that you have. And then it opens an opportunity for you to say, I'm just like you. The only difference is Jesus is at the center of my life. So when you put him there, all those other difficult things fall away because you can trust that he's going to carry you through. The only way you can have that is if you invite him into your heart and develop a relationship with him. And then you can give him all of that pain and struggle and suffering that you're going through. When it's a Christian, they have the understanding, but sometimes it's activating that faith. And when we remind ourselves that it only has to be the size of a mustard seed, which is almost impossible to the visible eye to see, the tiniest amount of faith, when you give it to God and say, it's out of my hands, I want you to take control of this situation. I can't do it on my own. I can't have my family against me.
I'm gonna dig into something here. I'm gonna dig in because guaranteed people are gonna ask you this because they ask me this. I asked this, and I'm sure you did. At some point, it's like, why would a loving God allow this to happen to me when I was a young child and I had no capability of being able to do anything to protect myself? Why would a loving God do that? Where was he? How do you deal with that? I'm sorry. That's a good question.
It is a good question. And I think that part of what my healing process has gone through, and I don't know if you've ever heard of theophostic healing, but when you
Yes.
are going through a healing process, God can help you and allow you, with the assistance of other spiritual guidance, go through those moments as that child. And that's what I had to do. I had to put myself in that place, and I closed my eyes and put myself in that place, which is very difficult to do because it was abusive situations, and ask, where were you, God? And what he showed me as clear as day was that, one, he was right there beside me, immediately showed himself carrying the cross up to Golgotha.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's
in the
good.
suffering that he was in. And he had
Yes.
to go through that.
That's good.
And it was like he asked his father,
That's good.
"Why did you stop it? Why did you allow this to happen?" And it was because God has a purpose for our lives and the pain that we go through, so that other people can see that you go through things that don't have to happen. He's all powerful. He doesn't have to bring you through that.
That's right.
But he takes us through things so that on the other side of it, we have the opportunity to say, God is the reason why I came through that. It's not to punish me. It's to share with other people how he uses people like me to overcome, so that the enemy is defeated. The enemy thought that carrying that cross and being whipped 39 times and the lashes were going to take him out, but it didn't. God was right there for every single pain that he went through, and he's been there for every single pain that I've gone through.
Just like he was with Jesus right to the end.
To the end, and the bitter and the pain. And that's what he said to me. I have felt every pain, every sorrow, every bit of neglect, abuse, everything you felt. I felt every single thing. There's not one sorrow that I have gone through in my life that Jesus cannot relate to. So, in that, when I feel like he left me, he showed me himself right there. He saw it and he gave me the strength to get through it, to survive, so that I could do things like this, to share my story and say, you were never alone. He will never leave us or forsake us. He promises us that. And he never makes his promises. He's not a man that he should lie. He does not break his promises. And so there's the reason is just like, why did Daniel have to sit in a lion's den? Why did Shadrach, Meshach, and
That's right.
Abednego go through the
Yeah,
fire, right? It's a
that's right.
refining process. So he
That's right.
refined me as a little girl and in my teens and in my 20s, 30s, 40s to get to this place now where I'm still every day learning and growing and eating the word and trying to be
Yes.
to where he wants me to be. But I'm never at the place where I'm untouchable, right? The enemy's going to try to attack me till the day I die, but I will never give in to that woe is me. And, God, why did you do this to me? Why? I think it's a privilege to be chosen because he knows I'm strong enough and I have a strong enough faith to trust him to get me through those difficult times. And that's what he's done. He's carried me through and he has not forsaken me through every time I've been through a tough thing. He's brought me through it. And for that, I'm forever grateful.
I am so glad that we have been doing this. This is great. Well, I consider doing another episode on
Me too. I
there's
think
all
without
kinds
you,
of topics we can do, for sure. But as we come to an end, let me ask you what I love to ask everybody that they don't know is coming. If you could do, and you can do anything you want when it comes to kindness. What would you like to do to someone or something, or it could be a cultural thing, it could be a religious thing, it could be a personal thing, it could be anything. What is something that is on your heart that you would like to do to see kindness make a difference in people's lives?
There are so many opportunities. And I think that, like you, I've been through a year of just trusting God, and putting him first, and he's starting to turn things around and giving me more opportunities to do things like this where I'm speaking and not expecting payment or not expecting, you can get on podcasts and expect to be paid. You can go to different engagements, and I'm doing another talk tonight with a women's group, and I'm doing it just because I know that that's how God is opening doors for me, and he will provide if I continue to do that. I have a heart to reach out to women who in underprivileged communities, where just to step into community centers and call them in, not necessarily businesswomen per se, because right now I'm kind of in those groups, but the underprivileged and people that aren't being reached, right? The unreachable are the ones that I think need to know that they're loved just as much as the ones that are making, six figures or that have a fancy car or a nice house. They are just as much loved in God's eyes as the ones that have the things that we, that they don't have, that maybe I don't have. And so I'm starting to kind of go around to some of the community centers in my area and reach out to those that are not being reached right now. I think that that's where my heart's desire is. I think that it says in the Bible to despise not the day of small beginnings. And sometimes we think we're going to get out there, we're going to launch our business, and then we're going to just explode and make all kinds of money and be everywhere. And the humbleness that Jesus displayed when he walked on this earth is something that I am really striving to continue to have in my life, regardless of how God blesses me. I want to remain humble in the sense where when I smile at people on the street, when I see somebody homeless and I don't turn away, when I, invite someone to sit with me because they're sitting alone, those are the ways where I feel like we're living the life that Jesus wants us to live. And we can't disregard those who, whatever we've done to the least of the people in our communities, we're doing it to Jesus, right?
Yes.
So that is my heart's desire. I want to serve. I want to do to the least of the people in our community that people are being ignored, those that are being ignored and pushed aside. That God has a heart for those people. He specifically mentions the widow and the poor, and why would he do that if he didn't expect for us to do the same? So
That's right.
when it's an opportunity comes and I can maybe be on the bigger stage, then I for sure will take it. But for now, I feel like God has me in this community and in this area. Toronto is a city filled with,
Oh
the
my
rich,
gosh.
very rich, and then the very poor.
Oh
And there are
yes.
and people on the streets, and it's -15 out here today. And
Yes.
so, a pair of socks or mittens or whatever goes a long way. And that it doesn't cost a lot, but it means a lot to that person where you're just showing them that you're not above them. Jesus didn't walk around.
That's right. Yeah.
He helped whoever he could, whenever he could. And that's what I want to do.
Joe, I love what you just said. And I also love how you said, the only thing that matters is just reaching out and touching one person per day, if that's all that happens. So I don't know who's going to listen to this podcast, but you've hit me on so many levels with so many things you've said. If that's the reason why this podcast happened, it was very powerful for me. And I appreciate everything you've said and what you've done. And I'm so glad that we got to do this. We'll have to do it again, because we can dive. I would love to dive into, like, there's such a huge population of people that have been through what we've been through, and they don't know what to do, or they're afraid to do it, and they're living with it and can't stand it. And it is a huge population of people that need this kind of love and help and support to get them free from the enemy. And that's, we have same goals. This is what I want to do too. So I want to thank you so much for coming on this show. It was just wild how this didn't work and that didn't work and nothing. I canceled. Remember, I canceled. I canceled this. I'm like, how did I do that? Because it said that I canceled it. Why would I do that? I don't remember canceling it. But anyway, I'm glad it worked.
But it didn't work. We're not giving him any credit. It's like I was going to make sure that this happened one way or the other. We had a missed Zoom that we didn't connect with one day last week or the week before. And then I'm like, I got to book again. And then when you sent that invitation, I'm like, we're going to do this. He's not going to win. So I'm so thankful, Ed, for you just taking time to talk with me and for giving me an opportunity to share the book. I encourage everyone to jump on Amazon or Kindle and get it. I actually this morning got my first notification that a payment will be deposited in the next few days. And to me, that's an answer to prayer, because I'm kind of just going on what God has me to do right now. And the finances is secondary.
Yes.
His story and doing what he wants me to do.
Yes.
Is the foremost, the most important thing. And I feel like we're on the same page, so I can relate to you.
Oh, we are. You don't know the half of it. I'm sitting here listening to you going, it's like you're my sister, and you are. You're my sister in Christ, which is so awesome. But I'm sitting here going, she does not know about me. She does not know she does not know how we're connecting. And I'm sitting here going, wow, this is amazing.
It's a mirror,
really
right? Our lives are mirroring each other, and we're two different countries, and we're two different genders, and we're different points in our lives. But I think that that's how God works. He orchestrates things like this when we take our hands off and let him do what he wants to do and use us in ways like this. So I'm so thankful for the time that we've been able to spend together. And I look forward to doing it. Let's for sure do it again, because I think every time we speak God's word and we say his name and we shine his light, the enemy just flees. He's going away. And that's my, I want him gone. I want him around. We're going to give God the glory for all of this. So thank you again.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I know I'm going to get the book, and I will probably I'd like to do a solo podcast on how that impacted me and just the thoughts I have about your book. I can see doing that, and then us meeting again for sure. So anyway, I want to thank you again, Joe. It was really, really great, and God bless you. And I'll be keeping you in prayer too. That's a big thing in my life, and I don't just do podcasts for whatever. It's like there's a reason why. So thank you again, Joe, and we'll do this again. God bless you.
All right. Take care.